All right, Rabbosai, good morning. We are going to, in Meretz Hashem, conclude Osnun Ches this morning in Tzidkas Hatzaddik, and we are picking up, in on page Kuf Mem Aleph, towards the end of Osnun Ches. So we actually left off on page Kuf Mem Aleph in the Bi'urei Chasidus on the right-hand column. But we're gonna skip this piece. He just brings another raya to his idea from the Gemara Maseches Sota. But instead, I want to use our few moments that we have together this morning, focusing on the left-hand paragraph. So page Kuf Mem Aleph, left-hand paragraph. So the Rebbe writes as follows: Ulefi hamavor la'el. So let's remember again, what Reb Tzaddik introduced us to was this idea, first of all, that a person could simultaneously be a tzaddik and a rasha. That area, again, using the definitions that we established in the last week, that tzidkos and rishos is not an absolute state, but rather, again, in fact, they are kind of coexistent states. That in any given moment in life, I am both a tzaddik and both a rasha, reflective of my spiritual standing in different areas of life. So Rebbe goes on, he says, and that's why he says, again, remember that even if I commit an Advaira b'shogeg, right, even if I commit an Advaira accidentally, there's still going to be liability for that act, because any Advaira that I commit is reflective of something which is in a state of disrepair inside of me. So because there is that disrepair, because there is that pegam, what the Rebbe called, therefore there is liability and there is responsibility for that, as opposed to thinking that because it's an accident, therefore by definition there's no responsibility. No, even when there's a shogeg, at the end of the day, that highlights that something is misfiring inside of me. So we'll say now, let's pick up page Kuf Mem Aleph, the left-hand paragraph. According to what we've learned, Yuchalhu ladas ulahavchin al yadam mahim hadvarim haasurim she'einenu naki legamrei mehem adayim mamam gelibo. This is incredibly powerful. The Rebbe here now discusses the incredible power of sin. Now, not the power of sin in a negative way, but it's going to sound strange, the power of sin in a positive way. You'll say, what does that mean? The Rebbe says something so simple yet profound, that when I make mistakes in life, when I commit averos, so I understand which things are still in a state of disrepair. In other words, we'll say it's kind of like the same way that when a person becomes physically ill, at times physical illness can be an incredible bracha. Why? Because if I would not exhibit the signs of illness, I would not know what was wrong internally. Right? Without becoming sick, I would never know what's going on. Meanwhile, something so compromising could be occurring internally, and had my body not presented with physical symptoms, I would have never known that. I would have never known to fix the problem. So Tzaddik says it's the same thing in Ruchnius. When I commit an Advaira, what I am ultimately showing myself is that something is in a state of disrepair. Now, I will say, in general, we all know that something inside of us, from a Ruchni perspective, is in a state of disrepair. I know, but sometimes I don't know what. It's interesting. We all know we're not perfect. Hopefully we all know we're not perfect. We all know that we need work, right? We all know that there's avot that has to be done. But sometimes the shaila is, in what area? What should I be focusing on? And then a person commits an Advaira, and this is going to sound like a strange statement, but the beauty of an Advaira is that, now I know my weakness. I know where the problem is. The Advaira kind of highlights the chink in the armor, right? It goes ahead and it highlights what my weaknesses are. So now I know what it is that I have to work on. He goes on, he says, it's not only that. Remember, often when I commit an Advaira, this is an interesting exercise. The Advaira is usually never just about the Advaira, right? We're good people and we want to do the right thing. So when I commit an Advaira, usually what that does is it highlights some other dynamic that's occurring as well, right? Maybe it's self-esteem, or maybe it's self-worth, or maybe it's addiction, or whatever it might be. An Advaira opens my eyes to a lot of the internal processes which are occurring. He goes on, he says, therefore, again, once I become a bit more self-aware as a result of the commission of the Advaira, I could begin to address some of the things that are wrong. He goes on, alot shenichshal biznus in benosav mipnei shekol misha lohut achar bulmus taiva shal arayos sov shama achilim osam b'sar. So he gives an interesting example of this. Lot, right? So Lot committed 2 repeated acts of incest. Now, how does that happen? How does that happen? You want to say he got drunk? You know, a lot people get drunk all the time, and they do stupid things. That's a far cry from incest. It's a far cry from. In fact, again, you know what's interesting to note is Chazal, when they speak about drunkenness, there's shichrus and there's shichruso shalot. You could get drunk and you could get lot drunk, right? So lot drunk is what Chazal term for like when you're so drunk that you don't even know the difference between right and wrong. Now, both say the truth is, those of us who have enjoyed a l'chaim, and maybe at times too many l'chaims, maybe on Purim or some other times. So I'll say there are certain things where no matter how drunk you are, it would not dawn on a normal person to do certain things. It just wouldn't. It just wouldn't. So what Tzaddik says is, how does it happen that a person becomes drunk? True, but then comes to engage in an act that is so off the charts in its wrongness, right? In its wrongness, in its offensiveness, to the point I will say to be clear that this is not like a Jewish thing, right? That the concept of incest is just a basic part of a basic Noahide code of morality. How does that happen? So Tzaddik says that's what happens because inside Lot had issues with morality in general, right? In fact, again, the Mefarshim bring down that one of the reasons he wanted to move to Stone was because of their lax moral code. So Rav Tzaddik says, when you are struggling with internal issues, those internal issues manifest themselves in all different kinds of unhealthy ways. So when Lot commits this sin, the world now knows what Lot's inner weakness truly is. And his inner weakness ultimately was this pursuit of arayos, this pursuit of immorality. Rabbi Tzadik's just using this as an example that a sin is not just a sin, but an Advaira is a manifestation of what's broken on the inside. Which I will say again, I just want to point out, according to Rabbi Tzaddik, and this is why an Advaira is a gift. I know that sounds strange, but an Advaira could be a gift because just like it's only when I get physically sick that I know what's happening inside of me, and so the physical symptoms are a gift. They show me what's broken, what needs repair, what needs to be addressed. When I commit an Advaira, not that we're encouraging it, but when I commit an Advaira, I know what's wrong inside of me. I know what's broken. I know what needs to be repaired. Lot commits these acts of incest. It becomes clear that he needs to go ahead and work on his moral code. I will say, by the way, I want to be clear. What immorality have we seen in Lot up until this point in time? Nothing, right? I just want to be clear. Like Lot hasn't done anything that would have indicated to us that he could have been nichshel, that he could have unfortunately committed these heinous acts. Nothing. But Rav Tzaddik understands that lemaisa it bespeaks an internal state of disrepair, and he ends v'lo rak shim eino tzadik legabe davar zeh lo yinishma min hamichshol bo ela gam yesh lapamim shamichsholim mizdamnin la'adam min hashamayim b'mechuvan v'tachlisan shal hakishlonos halalu hu l'tovas nafsho kadei la'ororo al yidei kach sheyoshav b'tshuva shlema v'yischaret al osa davar. Now here, the way Rav Tzaddik ends is he says something very interesting. He says, therefore, sometimes I will commit let me say differently. Sometimes the Ribono Shel Olam will choreograph and orchestrate certain circumstances which will dafka lead me to sin in order to get me to wake up to inner realities. So we'll say, so sometimes I commit Averos, ultimately, again, because those Averos are representative of a state of inner dysfunction. And sometimes the Ribono Shel Olam, causes me to sin, now puts me in difficult circumstances, or creates impossible situations, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this is going to sound a little bit strange, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to make this mistake. Don't misunderstand those words that I don't have free choice. I always have free choice. But Baruch Hu Kiviyachol creates these circumstances because he wants me to experience the failure. Why does he want me to experience the failure? Because through the failure, I will discover what my true inner weakness is. Without the failure, I would never know. Without the misstep, I would never become aware. Without the hate, I would never truly look inside and try to figure out what is it that's misfiring. So we'll say that's the end of the os. And again, in this one os, like I told you, I think it's incredibly transformative. So in one os, Reb Tzaddik teaches us that in any given moment in life, I'm both a Tzaddik and a Russia, which is such a life-affirming precept that nothing in life is absolute. That we're not absolute. I'm both a tzaddik and I'm both a rasha, which is good and it's bad. It's bad because I'm also a rasha, but it's also good because I'm not a total rasha. And Baruch Hashem, I have elements of tzidkus inside of me. Ultimately, says Reb Tzaddik, a person only commits an Advaira in an area for which he has a predisposition. There's something on the Advaira is the manifestation of something which is in a state of disrepair, which is the gift of the Advaira. The Advaira tells me exactly what I have to work on, to the point that sometimes the Ribono Shalom himself will choreograph circumstances which will enable me to sin in order that I am able to see what is in a state of dysfunction, and so I know what it is that I need to repair. All right, we'll stop over here. Shkoyach, we'll pick up Mir Tashem on Monday.